Hey guys, it's Rich with your Monday Spot on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about pagan weddings. This week's topic comes from Jenny Vamp5, who says, I'm getting married this year. Congratulations. We will be having a pagan hand fasting of our own design. Fantastic. But what are the wedding slash marriage traditions from each of your perspectives? Okay, I'm going to stop right there and say that the majority of weddings that I have been to, or for those of you who don't know, I am an ordained minister, so I can actually perform marriages as well. The marriages that I have performed have mostly been secular in nature, with some being religious as well. Most of the time, whenever they are religious in nature, usually the couple has a family pastor that they like to utilize for that position, rather than somebody that is either a friend or somebody that is not necessarily part of their church group. So they usually opt for having the family pastor or somebody that they are more familiar with in a religious role for a religious type ceremony. The majority of the weddings that I have done, again, have been more secular in nature, where there is some religious touch on it, but not overly religious in nature. So, yeah, that's my my experience with traditions and with weddings from my perspective. Did you have a pagan wedding? I am not married. Yes, I have rings on both hands, on the ring fingers, but no, I am not married as of yet. So I have not had a pagan wedding. If you haven't, would you want one? And this is a question that I kind of go back and forth, because myself and my boyfriend are both more so, I don't want to say cloistered, but we aren't really, we're not very out there as far as events being about us. We have talked about it, and he's very much I don't want a big wedding, I don't want people coming out of the woodwork and this and that, I don't want a huge event. And I'm very much one of those people that I don't like events that are centered around me. I get very anxious. I didn't even really want a graduation party whenever I graduated high school. And yeah, I don't like events that are about me. And that's just where I'm at on everything. So having a wedding and a formal occasion all about me and my partner is not something that I really would look forward to and would really aspire to have. So don't know if I'd really even have a big wedding to begin with, let alone he's not pagan, so therefore maybe some elements of pagan aspects, like a hand fasting or a more neutral secular type of vows being exchanged, something like that. But having something that is very pagan in nature is not necessarily something that I would want, especially whenever it's not part of his belief system, and it's not really, I don't like events that are really about me. So not sure if I would really have a pagan wedding, but I would like to have some pagan elements. Now, granted, there are elements of pagan aspects in Christian weddings, so you can also add them in that way. Instead of having regular white candles, you can have colored candles representing different directions and whatnot, the elements and whatnot. You can have those little pagan touches without it being overtly pagan in nature. So those, if we ended up doing a type of wedding that was more formal, I think that having those little touches, if we happen to go with those touches, or with those elements in our wedding, I I think that those little touches would be something that would be a little nod to paganism, but not be overtly in your face to those who are in attendance. Um, let's see, what else do we have here? Would you want to incorporate aspects of paganism into a different style of wedding? All the wedding thoughts. Okay. So, like I said, incorporating different parts of paganism into a wedding is completely fine. I have no problem with that from a personal aspect. Something I would very much be okay doing. Adding in the handfasting cord and having that something that is crafted in a loving manner in order to have this ritual being performed. I think that is something that not only harkens back to Christianity, but also to paganism, and I love the symbolism of it. Also takes me to the symbolism of the cable tow in Masonic rituals, if you know of that. I like the symbolism. I am all about symbolism, and I love it. So having the handfasting cord, having the candles in different directions and having them lit at certain times or at the beginning of a ceremony, and just having them there and being a way to set space, not even necessarily incorporating that into the whole ceremony and the audience, the crowd that is there. They don't even necessarily need to know what the significance of those candles are, but you knowing that it is there is enough. And I have a few notes, and I'm going to go ahead and reference to those. So I have been to a lot of weddings. Or at least a large handful of weddings. Again, most of them seem to be secular in nature, except for the ones on my step family side. They are all very much Catholic. All happened in a big church and a very formal setting. Everybody wore tuxes and suits and everything else. You know, the ones that I've presided over and the ones that I've been to a lot more recently have been a little bit more dialed down, a little less formal in venue, a little less formal in the style that was prepared. Let's see, the one that I did, it was literally in the first one I've ever done was in somebody's living room. And that was very much, I looked at both of them with the witnesses present. And I said, do you guys want to get hitched? And they said yes. I said, sign here. That's it. On one occasion, I did a wedding that was at the Botanical Gardens. I said a little poem, and, they exchanged vows as they wanted to and exchanged rings, and we signed the marriage certificate. One of the ones that I did was in somebody's kitchen living room area of their house. And that was their little wedding, and then they had the big wedding. And they were a little bit more religious. A Catholic background for the groom side. And that one was more of the religious touches were put in for his, out of respect for him and his practice of Catholicism. The wife, not so much, or the bride, not so much. I do believe that she has her beliefs, but not really a huge part of her daily life, and that's fine. And they are just a fantastic couple. But whenever we did their second wedding, the big formal wedding, it was outside at a hotel, in their little area outside there with the fountains and all that stuff. I was mic'd up, they were mic'd up. It was very big. And that they wanted a little bit more of, I want a little bit more religious aspects. I have this poem from The Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss, and I put my own little twist on the very end of the ceremony or the sermon. I don't even know if you call it a sermon, but the ceremony itself. I put my own little twist on the back end of it because I knew them and they were good friends. So, having those little touches in there really helps make the wedding day a little bit more special, and it adds a little touch that you and the couple can actually have as their little special times, I guess. It's just that little personal touch that I really enjoyed having on that one. The last one I've done was a 1920s flapper themed, and I dressed up as a gangster and whatnot. It was really cool. They opted not to have the vestments, the collar and whatnot. So I dressed up as gangster and had the hats and whatnot, the fedora, and very much a less religious type of ceremony. I did incorporate some religious aspects because the groom was a little Christian, but not really that serious about it. The bride was Buddhist in nature and wasn't overtly wanting that to be part of the ceremony. The groom's mother was almost a nun. She almost took her vows. She was like this close to taking her vows to become a full-fledged nun. So I definitely wanted to have a prayer in there. And during the prayer and whatnot, they kind of like looked at one another, and they didn't really want to have a big overtly religious aspect to their wedding. So keeping it secular, keeping it a little tailored, because the one poem that I used was of Buddhist origin. I can't even remember what it was off the top of my head. I have it written down. I have all my little wedding scripts written down, so I do have those written down somewhere. One day I'll get them all together and have them compiled in my book of shadows, probably. But they wanted it to be Buddhist in nature, but not overtly Buddhist. They wanted it Christian in nature, but not overtly Christian. And just kind of, these two souls coming and uniting as one. And I even incorporated some of their backstory into it. So it gave that little personal touch. So as far as wedding ideas overall, I have a big issue with the multi-billion-dollar industry that is the wedding industry. I don't really charge for my services. If people wish to give me some money, I'm not going to turn it down. But, a little tip here and there is great, But most of the time I do weddings for free and to friends. And usually that's part of my wedding gift is, doing the wedding. So as far as wedding advice for anybody that's planning a wedding, try to go as cheap as possible, but also keep it as close to you as possible. And by that I mean I was helping planning a wedding that actually ended up falling through. I was going to perform the ceremony, but they decided to go with other things because they didn't have backup plans. They were going to have an outside venue of the mini Stonehenge in Wichita, Kansas. And the couple didn't have a backup plan of what if it rains. And they got so daunted down by all of the little nuances that you had to plan out that they end up just having a courthouse wedding. That's on them. But whenever I was thinking about this wedding and ruminating on what I was going to say, I did a lot of research into Celtic weddings and things that I can put into the ceremony, such as jumping over the broom and the handfasting itself, and the costumes and where you get those costumes at if you want your bridal party to be in costume, because it was supposed to be a medieval Renaissance fair type of setting. I could rattle off the name, at the time, the names of several different companies that were around the Wichita area that would make this stuff or rent it out. And didn't really get that far as to suggesting it to them because, again, they went to the courthouse wedding. But keeping it as cheap as possible, there are so many ways to keep it cheap. If you're having centerpieces, centerpieces I feel have kind of gone out of style, at least the ones that my stepmother and my father had at their wedding and so forth. I think those have gone kind of out of fashion. Having something as simple as a candle and a vase is a wonderful centerpiece. If you want to do words on the candle, you can get like transfer stickers and do those. It's easy. It can be cheap. Dollar store candles are fine. There are the jar candles that you can put pictures on if you want to do that. Keeping it low key, but also have that touch of elegance. With a couple ribbons and some hot glue, you can do a lot of stuff. And that's something to keep in mind about that. For pictures, I've heard this before, 35mm cameras, the disposable ones. You get a whole bunch of them for really cheap, and you put them as place settings, at each one of the tables. And at the end of the day, you collect up all the cameras, you go develop all the film, you got photography. So might not be the best photography. You might also want to get an actual photographer for the formal pictures, but you get a glimpse through other people's eyes of what they found important about the actual event. So having something like that for the reception, stuff like that is easy, and it can be cheap if you're trying to do it on the cheap. And given yourself enough time, it is not incredibly hard to plan out all of the events if you do it well enough in advance. If you are like some people that I don't want to be bothered with details, let somebody else do it, then by all means get yourself a party planner or a wedding planner that has all these contacts and whatnot. But certainly you don't have to go that route. You don't have to get a florist to do every arrangement on earth. There are some little arrangements that you can do by yourself and keep it fairly cheap and still keep it classy. So those are the wedding ideas that I have, or the wedding thoughts that I have. I guess to tailor it more, I would need to know what exactly your theme is. If you have a theme, is it going to be Renaissance inspired, or is it going to be inspired by the 1920s or whatnot? So these are things that I would ask you if I were helping you plan your wedding. So those are my wedding thoughts, and now we're going to go and we're going to get in the DeLorean, and we're going to turn back the time turner to last week, because unfortunately I was not able to do last week's video. So I'm going to go ahead and make up for it here, so you guys get an extra long video. So for Jenny Vamp, if you could go ahead and leave a comment below telling me what kind of wedding you're having, I would love to hear that. But getting to last week's topic that I wasn't able to cover, it was just a scheduling mix-up, on my part and whatnot. So I just wasn't able to do it, and it actually felt nice having the extra week off. But I don't want to get into that habit, because if you watch my personal channel, whenever I tend to take breaks, I take them for a really long time, and I need to get back into my personal channel. But going to last week's topic, this was a team member topic, along with some other topic suggestions from Rosemoonlooms. So, what do you consider the basic elements of your practice? And I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible. I also have my notes on that. The basic elements of my practice are literature, such as biblical works or works. Right now, I'm going through a book on Judaism and Jewish prayers and whatnot, copying down some that I find personally inspiring. Um, Going back to literature such as poetry or the 101 books, the Paganism 101 books that I have so many of up there, as well as along the rest of this room. Going back to theories such as the energetic interactions and how energy interacts with one, with not only me and other people, but also the surrounding situations. Correspondences such as color correspondences or herbal correspondences, stone correspondences, stuff like that. Deity communication, sitting in meditation and, just sitting in that quiet space to hear what spirit has to say to me and asking questions to spirit. And also doing divination, tarot, oracles, pendulums, stuff like that. Those are the basic elements of my practice, as well as the elements themselves. And this is one thing that I break down whenever I do any spell work that I'm creating for myself is, does it have aspects from all the elements? Is everything well balanced? Is the energetic interaction between me and this situation, is it warranted? Is it something I'm yearning enough for? Stuff like that. The color correspondences that I'm using, the herbal correspondences, any stones that I'm using, these are the basic things that I ask myself whenever doing any spell work. And those have really become the foundation of my practice, or the foundation of the elements, the basic elements of my practice, which goes into the next question: what is the foundation or core of your practice from which you build the rest? And I have written down here, the core of my practice is the belief in Christ and Sophia as consorts, along with the energetic connection to the people, places, things, or situations around me. So, with that being said, Christopaganism, I don't have a lot of material out there in order to set a foundation. It's one of those practices that not a lot of people have written about. Not a lot of people have published works on it. And, people who are Christopagan are starting to publish more and more, or get more ideas out there and basic foundational theories and situations and whatnot out there. They're becoming more and more recognized. However, there's not a lot out there, so it's still very much a, as you go, you figure it out. So, that's a lot of where I had to start was, the biblical practice, or the practice of Christianity that I grew up on and have very little resentment towards, and the practice of paganism and witchcraft that I also have an admiration for, that I did not grow up with, that I have a yearning to learn more about, and being able to bridge those gaps and, find the common ground and build on from there. So that for me is the foundation, is finding the commonality between the two seemingly opposing sides of my practice and bringing them together and building upon that commonality. The next question: do you ever feel yourself straying or getting off track and feel a need to go back to the basics? Absolutely, all the time. And the follow-up question: how do you identify those times and go about doing that? So I mostly identify those situations because I will sit back on the back porch like I often do and having a cigarette, which I should not be doing. But I will sit there and I'll think to myself, okay, when was the last time that I did any spell work? When's the last time that I was in meditation? When was the last time uh, I flipped a tarot card in order to, you know, suss out what I was feeling about something? When was the last time I did any of that? And if the answer is, well, I can't think of the last date that I did it, but it was a little while ago, that's usually my cue to say, hey, I need to go and do this. I need to, get out of this rut and do that. And I spend a lot of time thinking to myself, being an introvert. So, I kind of keep myself in check. And usually what ends up happening from those times to get back on track is sitting in a meditative state. And getting to that meditative state, the astral plane is a playground of mine, my own little area of the astral plane where I have my altar set up and everything, my virtual altar or my astral altar. That is like a little playground of mine where everything is available to me, and anything that I want to do, I can right there. So, going to that altar and holding space in that altar, even if it's for a couple minutes, just holding that space there is a big thing to get me back on track and get me back into, finding that balance in life. So, Rosemoonlooms asked us to suggest another way to get topics addressed. This was asked in 2019, whenever we had a backlog of topics. As always, down in the description below, Cara has set up there, if you'd like to ask topics and whatnot, how you can do that. She has instructions on there. She has it on the blog, the Pagan Perspective blog, all that stuff on how to get topics to us. Also on the YouTube about page, I believe there is also a description on how to get topics to us. So Cara's just like littered all that stuff all over the place, which makes it very easy for everybody to find. So if you have topics to suggest that are not immediate topics, go ahead and suggest them there. And let's get into how we do this, or how I would suggest getting your questions answered if we have that backlog and whatnot. So, first things first, simply ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. So, if you watch different pagan YouTubers and you have thought of their, of what their answer might be, but you don't really know for sure, because sometimes that really surprises the crap out of you, what their actual answer is. If they haven't addressed it, then ask them. Ask them what their opinion is on this, that, or the other. The most that they can say is, no, I'd rather not broach that subject. So simply ask them. A lot of YouTubers have in the description below emails or Twitter handles or Instagram handles or profiles or whatever they call them for Instagram. They have those listed in the descriptions. And if you're not taking advantage of looking for that information, either in the description below, I invite you to do that with some of your favorite YouTubers. Sometimes you don't realize that they're in there. I know Cara used to, on her old videos, used to put in a thing into the description at the very bottom, say, if you're reading this, say this in the comment section. And it was a lot of fun, and I kind of miss doing that. I don't think she still does it, but I haven't gone in the descriptions to find out, so bad on me. But I know that Cara used to do that, and it was a lot of fun. So I invite you to go into the descriptions of YouTubers and actually see if they have that information provided. If they don't have it provided there, then on the About page. If they don't have anything listed there, ask them in a comment. If they are completely ignoring you through comments, or they have comments turned off, then yeah, I think you're kind of stuck there. You can call them out in a video of your own and ask them, hey, do you take requests? But I think a lot of YouTube pagans out there actually have that information readily available. Also, if you're on their social media, direct message them. Ask them, hey, if they don't say if you have topic suggestions suggested to this. If they don't have any of that or they haven't spelled it out, then direct message them if you can. If you cannot direct message them, say on Twitter. See, I have direct messaging on for anybody that wants to direct message me for whatever reason. They can directly message me. So for people who don't have that turned on, that don't allow it, unless I think both parties are following, I think that's the way that goes. If they don't have that turned on, for anybody to direct message them, then ask them in a post saying or commenting on one of their things on their social media. See, this is how bad I am at social media. You ask them, in a post saying, hey, how do we get in contact with you if you or if we have a question for you? And either they'll respond or they don't, or they'll send you to an about page on a website that they have all the information right there. So if you just ask these people, and most YouTubers are pretty okay with getting topic suggestions because there's only so many videos you can do without scraping the bottom of the barrel and or getting YouTube burnout. So sometimes having those topic suggestions, the video suggestions in your back pocket is a good little fallback. If you don't really know what else you want to talk about, or the things that you want to talk about is going to take a lot more research than you want to do at the moment, and you have to get a video up soon, stuff like that. Now, I have a handful of topics in my back pocket that I've been waiting for YouTube videos on my personal channel, but I haven't been doing them because I'm bad. Some would say naughty. So yeah, unfortunately, I have not gotten to the topics that have been suggested, but always feel free to drop me a line, and maybe eventually, hopefully, one day I can actually get around to doing those. And if it's something a little bit more urgent, then I will try to get to it a lot quicker. But overall, depending on what the topic is, sometimes I'll just, write a little comment, or just do a whole video on it that's really quick and off the cuff. So, but that is all that I have. We're getting to the point where this is going to be entirely way too long. And the time turner has caught us back up to present time. So anyway, trying to get all the little metaphors and whatnot in there all at once, and kind of failing, I think. Anyway, now I'm rambling. I will see you guys next week. Until then, may you have love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye.